G'day and welcome back for more Space Engineers Survival, and it's time to get started on the tank. So let's get the wheelbase up and functional first up, so we can then start building the bits that are going to be different to what the catapult has. Because I am really itching to take on that base, so I want to get this thing done. Just like the catapult, I've got a fairly wheel-heavy wheelbase. And with the tank, that's even more important than the catapult, because this is going to give us stability as we try and move across the terrain rather quickly, particularly when we're under fire. I am going to be adding some wheels to the front and rear that are going to be offset height-wise compared to these, just so we've got some bumpers. But this is where I wanted to talk about how I would approach a military vehicle. Much like military vehicles in the real world, you're going to want redundancy for any critical systems. You're going to be wanting to have that ability to keep in the fight longer. We're also going to want to have plenty of weapons, and we're going to need ammunition to be able to get to those weapons, and potentially for repairs to be able to happen to those weapons while we're in the fight. And I really want to try and incorporate as many automated welding systems throughout this build as I possibly can. The first system that I think would need this is going to be some decoys, which I'll place relatively far forward on the vehicle so that they come into the range of the turrets first, and they hopefully become the targets for enemy turrets. The way I think I'm going to approach this tank is place our welding systems first. Given that they need large conveyors to move the components through, they're going to be the largest space occupying part of this build, and I can fit batteries and other components around them. I'm going to be wanting welders for decoys, welders for turrets, and welders for the cockpit, because I want to keep the cockpit protected as much as possible, because I don't want to die, and I'm going to be piloting this vehicle directly. If I wasn't piloting it directly, I would need to have a whole bunch of cameras on it so that I could pilot it remotely, and I think I would struggle with that, particularly with the catapult trailer. Now, the connector for this setup is going to have to be in an unorthodox position, probably under at the rear here, facing downward, and we'll have to use a piston-based connector on the base to connect to it. Since I don't think I'm going to be able to have a connector at the a connector at the rear, since that'll be where the mount is for the trailer, and I probably don't want to have one at the front since it'll just get shot up. So this first welder up here, it's going to be for our front-mounted decoys. I want to have as much redundancy in this thing as possible, so we'll have a decoy on this side and a decoy on the other side, both protected by welders, and both of them surrounded by armor blocks, so that the welder can protect the armor blocks initially, and hopefully prevent the decoy from ever getting shot. And that should mean that the front of this vehicle is the part that needs to have the heaviest armor, which will allow us to keep the vehicle relatively light, as I'd really prefer to maintain mobility as a part of my defensive strategy, rather than just being this hulking thing that stands there and takes all the damage. I want to keep mobile and just try and focus the damage, if I can, on one area that I've well protected. I think what I may do even for this front segment is double up the welders. That would mean we can put a bit more armor around here. I mean, heck, we could even do this and triple them up on each side. There should be some overlap between this welder and this welder, and it may even be on this decoy, which will protect that decoy much, much more, which is exactly what I'm after. So I think that's the way I'll do it. I'll do the triple welders on there, which means we need to pipe them. And probably the best thing to do would be to pipe them directly to each other straight off the bat. Now, as we go backwards, I think what might be smart is to pop a welder there and a welder there, and then continue our conveyor tube through the middle. And instead of using any tubes, let's just go straight for medium cargo containers, since we'll need to have a fair bit of capacity for repair components on this. Now, these welders facing backwards, they're going to be focusing on the turrets, and then I'm planning on putting the cockpit somewhere about back here, so I'll need a pair of welders focusing on it as well. I want to protect my seat. Above everything else, it needs to be protected, and the decoys are part of that protection, as well as many welders focusing on it just to be extra sure. Now I'm just going to, what I might do is place conveyor junctions all the way out and then just see where things are going to end up. Okay, so we've got the rear here, and I might keep it a block forward from there, pop a welder on, and that'll mean that can protect a turret at the back here. If we keep bringing these welders out the side, we should be able to protect a couple of turrets if I line them up properly. Something like that might work, especially since I can then just put a conveyor junction, and I'm using conveyor junctions because of the attachment points, even though they are less efficient in terms of processing in Space Engineers. So with that, we can then go with a welder across here. Is that going to leave me? Yes, perfect. I did leave enough space. So that'll allow me to put a cockpit right in between a welder coming from each system on each side. I could even double that and put it between 4. Yeah, extra safety. I like it. Now we also need to have the conveyors crossing into the middle. So we might pop another cargo container there. Then we'll go back to our conveyor, then rotate this around this way. And that's not dead center, we need to use a frame first. So a frame on there, then this in the center, and then that'll be ready for our connector, which will go underneath. So that's our rearming and reloading for all the components sorted. And this is how many welders we've got. So we should be able to put a turret above each of these welders. So that's 1, 2, should be able to put one centered above that. 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 7 for that side. So that's 14 turrets. That's pretty solid. Ooh, should I use the rover cockpit or is it not going to fit? The rover cockpit makes a bit more sense underneath here, but is that going to get in the way of the wheels and other things? I should be able to jump up into that. Yeah. Definitely use the rover cockpit. I was actually thinking for a moment that I would use the fighter cockpit here, which, you know, just because it's a bit of a larger base and it does have a few more components, so it's got a bit more durability, though I think it's only very small because really you'll get kicked out once the bulletproof glass is gone. And ooh, this might even have more. The rover cockpit might even be stronger. So that's another reason to choose it, other than it's going to look nicer. I really do like the idea of running between the wheels of the vehicle and then jumping into the cockpit underneath, where I'll have this big armor cover over me. And in theory, if things were going terribly and I'd lost all my wheels, as long as I have a drill on me, I should be able to hop out of the cockpit, in between the wheels, still protected by everything, and just drill myself a little foxhole, and maybe even survive in that. As long as I've got the patience to drill far enough away from wherever I am that I'm in danger. So I think we should just be able to mirror this to the other side now. As long as I'm happy with the height. And I do like having that extra clearance over the wheels, since I have a bad habit, particularly with 5x5s, of not giving myself proper clearance. Now, let's also link these up, because I want to replace some of those junctions, I think. No, I probably don't. I will keep them all as junctions. A few cargo containers, a few junctions. We don't need huge amounts of cargo, we just need enough to survive a singular engagement. This cargo container in here, I think, should be removed and should be replaced by a conveyor junction. And then I should possibly put a cargo container in here. Since if I'm going to have cargo containers, I should probably have them protected by welders. And this one on the side here should be able to get this welded up as well. I really should maximize the effectiveness of my cargo system as well as everything else. And I'm also realizing that I could do this and place another welder in here. Some of these welders may have to go if I don't have room for batteries, but I should be able to put batteries on either side of this level. And 4 batteries on a vehicle like this may be enough, but I'm probably going to go for even more than that since I don't really know the power consumption of welders. I honestly have no idea how much they use up. So I could end up consuming incredible amounts of power with just the welders. With my medium cargo containers, I'm also deliberately placing them with the small port up, since if I end up connecting turrets, when I end up connecting turrets, I want to have as many small ports upwards as possible so that I've got as much flexibility as I can in terms of where I put those turrets, and to have the shortest conveyor length with the small tubes as I possibly can. And I need to get rid of this cargo container as well, since that one is placed the same as the others, not protected by welders. This is easily the most complex attempted regenerative armor design that I have ever done, and I'm hoping it works out, but I really don't know. I don't know whether there's some extra factors that I've not really accounted for that might crop up, but I guess we'll find out once we actually get to test this thing in action. Now we've got a link at the rear. I might put a link at the front as well. It may allow us to put some extra rows down the middle. Oh, did that wrong. Might go frame there. Whoops. Frame here, and then put 3 of the conveyor junctions in the middle. Now, do I think... yeah, I'll easily be able to walk under that. Oh, I could put another 3 welders in the middle, front and back. I might just do that. This thing is going to weigh an absolute ton. Just from these functional components, let alone the few bits of heavy armor that I might put on here. Now I wonder if I can put a welder that way and another one this way. No, they just don't fit. There's a tiny bit of overlap. Rats. Alright, might leave that bit clear so that we've got space to move around. We need to put our other welder on this side. There we have it. That is going to be the basis of our design, I think. That is a huge number of welders. Hopefully it'll mean that enough of this ship is within range of its own repair systems that, for the most part, after each engagement, my repairs will be very, very quick. I have to admit, looking at this thing with all of it welded up, it's kind of ridiculous. The amount of welder areas and the amount of... oh, I'm definitely going to have to fit a sensor system to this. The amount of, I was about to say, death areas is quite significant. Now, I need to do some testing. I've assumed that we should be able to place turrets on this row and they'll get welded. So I want to see where they actually do get protected by these welders and where I'll have to make sure that the turrets are in range. Where else do I want to test? That should just be fine. One spot. And if I get the stuff to build a transformer box, we should be able to pop that on there and quickly turn that welder on. There we go, powered. Let's pop you on. Ooh. That is a very good sign. How far back can we go? Oh, yep, still. Still. Not there, okay. And how far out to the side will it go? Will it go another block? No. Alright, and how far forward of it? Okay. That gives us... let's actually just paint it out. That's actually really cool. That is a nice big area. I bet these corners don't go though. Oh no, they do! Awesome. Are there any spots that are double thick? Yes, there are! Okay. Not that one though. I bet it's not that one either. Okay, it's just in front that we get that extra bit. Because we don't get those. Alright, let's pop this thing off so I don't toast myself. Looking at this shape, I've got 2 options with my turrets. I can either have them straight onto our cargo system, or I can have them a block above it. And that would allow us to put some armor in between and protect this stuff even if the turrets get destroyed. It does mean that I'm going to have to carefully place the turrets so that they get welded up. And let's just see something. If I have the turrets just barely inside the area for the welder, like so, will it get welded up? Yes. Yes, it will. What if I place something in that welder? Which welder is it? Welder 25. Oh yeah. Has that gone into it? Yes, it has. Cool. Alright, so that can work. I just have to get them somewhere in that area. And I'm going to leave this here as a demonstration, so I know for the rest of them. So it's the 2 blocks directly above where the welding tips are, and then one to each side. So it'd be, as long as they're, ooh, touching this. So we could go back here and place a turret like so. And then we can go forward and place another one here. And that will protect, this one welder should protect both those turrets. Ooh, this thing is going to be bristling with guns. Yes. I possibly want to have some center guns that are higher, but I don't think I'll be able to, because I really want them to be able to shoot over each other. I may put some side guns on though, just so we've got something with a lower line of sight. Lots of things to think about with turret placement. What I'm going to do now is place out all of the turrets in a rough design of what I want them, where I want them to be, and I'm not going to actually build them just yet. The reason for that is I want to be able to work in this 1 block space in between the turrets while I can. So I'll place them all down, place down where I'm going to need to have a conveyor junction to be able to feed them ammunition, and then strip them all off and then place down all our armor. And I am predominantly going to go with light armor here. It'll be heavy at the front and put some heavy at the rear so that we're not balanced poorly with mass. But generally speaking, the rest of it's going to be light armor, which is weird for a tank, but I think makes sense so that we can keep our mobility up. Now I know spreading the protection of a welder across 2 turrets may make each turret more at risk, and if I then also go and do this and add a turret to the side, I'm spreading it even further. But I still think it's the better way to go. Now, is that gonna weld this? Let's just make sure that this welder will actually reach that block. It doesn't. Okay. The turrets have to be a block inward of there. Alright, fine. Is that going to be a problem for the wheels? I think it will be. Nuts! Oh, that sucks. That really sucks. I wanted to have side-mounted turrets that were welder supported. I don't think I can with the welders in that position. I think what I may need to do, scrap these. I think I may need to shift these side welders out a whole block. Or maybe 2 blocks. Put a couple of conveyor frames in and move all of these outwards. So let's start on this side and do it. So pop a frame, junction, and welder. Because then, with that welder behind us, we should be able to pop a Gatling turret straight on there. And we don't need one forward of this point, but if we have one, or we can't have one there that's protected, but we could have at least 2 on the side, and we'll probably put one back here anyway, even though it won't be welded. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move all of these outwards a bit. Don't want to move this one out because I want it to protect that decoy, and I don't really want to come out yet another block because that's going to be extending us to a breadth that may become an issue getting in and out of the hangar. It's really bad timing with the jetpack fuel. But what I'm thinking of doing is I'll reverse the position of that last welder that I removed. So what I mean by that is instead of having it facing forwards, I'm going to face it backwards. I mean, instead of having it face backwards, I'll face it forwards. So they'll both branch off there. And that will mean I can do this. Pop that there. Pop a pair of conveyor frames on. And then a turret on here. And since these side turrets aren't going to be in the action as much as the top ones, I don't really need as many of them. Having a pair on the sides just means that there's a little bit more fire and a little bit of fire for stuff that's below the firing lines of the roof ones. And that's really all they're there for. So that should work, I think. I like how this is panning out so far. Help if I actually put things in the right spots though. I wonder if I am going to be able to get in and out of the hangar with those turrets on the side. It's going to be a very tight squeeze to not scrub them against these walls and end up damaging them every time I come into park. This was supposed to be purpose-built to fit, as in the tank was supposed to fit within the hangar. I wonder if I've overcooked it a little bit. Oh well, we'll just find out. If they're a problem, I will bring them in a block and just hope that the wheels aren't an issue. Or I'll bring them in and pop them up a block and pipe them in from the side rather than from the base like I'm doing here. It would be ideal to be able to use conveyor frames to pipe some of these things up, the turrets, but I think we'll make do quite easily with the small conveyor tubes. So we'll just do the turrets on one half of the ship for now, and then once I've got all the conveyor positions lined up, I'll match them to the other side rather than having to place all these turrets, which can be a bit fiddly. Alright, so over this one, we'll just go simple. We'll go a single. And I'm actually not going to place any turrets directly over the cockpit. The reason for that is I don't want to draw any more attention to the cockpit area. I want it to be, well, only a target because they're trying to shoot the cockpit. I don't want to have guns up the top there. I don't want to have anything else that's going to draw attention to that area unnecessarily. I wonder though, if perhaps doing something like this won't draw much fire, but will share the effect of those welders for that turret. Plus it'll be a more interesting pattern. I mean, I could put a frame over this and lift up a turret. Or put one there. That is tempting. I'll leave that there for now because I'm very tempted to put one there. And then we need our rear defense turret on these two welders. Don't think we'll be fitting a pair of welders on there. I mean a pair of turrets on it. Just go with a single. How many is that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. So that's 30 turrets. Oh man. If these turrets start shooting each other, I'm going to be in all manner of trouble. These will be great for overhead shots, but if I'm firing against a base, I'm going to need a... Well, at least with the way things were the last I checked, with turrets still being bugged and hitting their own grids, these ones in the center, because I can't lift them up another block, are going to need to be able to be switched off unless I'm fighting aircraft. Is there a way I could lift those mid-welders up without causing all manner of trouble though? Could I take that away? What if I flip this around? Because I know this one is piped through that way. So then I could place another one up there, place a welder there, and then put some high turrets in the midline. That might actually be a much better way to go with this, because I could pair up turrets like that, put another conveyor block in here. Don't need the lower down ones, so yeah. This could work. For this one I'll have to go a bit simpler since I don't have that second block to join onto. I'll just have to go with spinning this that way and then Oh, wait a second. That's not going to work. It's totally not going to work. Now I just laid that out. Because I had misaligned them. So this has to be that way. Then I could put one like so. And then we could have a single welder. Yeah, that's as good as we're going to be able to go. If we're going to have one here, we should probably just go like that, go like that, and that. Then put our welders each side. This is making the whole vehicle a bit more roll prone, but it is relatively low profile considering the width of the wheelbase. But this could definitely work. I'm going to spin... Oops. Let's just weld one of these up. I'm going to spin this one back to the way it was before. That turret goes, that turret goes, that turret goes. That turret goes. And then we'll be able to have our mid turrets higher than our side turrets. The worry then, of course, is that these outer side turrets may try and shoot through the center, but I think this should provide a bit of a cooler looking tank, if nothing else, because we've got it sort of rounded and elevated in the center rather than just this big flat boring space. The other thing we can do, even though it's totally unnecessary, would be to put this welder back in here for some degree of redundancy there. Oh, fuel low. With this turret placement on the side, create an exposed welder here. That's going to be interesting to design around. Maybe we won't have that one. Oh, but I want them. But I don't. They're going to go. I don't really want to have exposed welders. And I cannot, for the life of me, think of a way of not having them exposed. If I'm not going to be doubling up the welders, I don't need to bring those all the way in there, but I think I will anyway. This turret comes back at least a block, probably two, so that we, again, don't have exposed welders. Yeah, I definitely prefer that look. Then we just got to figure out the front end of things. So up front here, I want to have a few bumper wheels so that we can go up slopes a little more easily. And I'll do the same at the rear, but I also at the front want to have some decoys. The decoys I want relatively off to the side. In fact, I want them a block higher than that. And I want it centered on each of these triplets of welders. So I'll have a couple of turrets in the middle, and then I'll have another decoy out this side, like that. Then we go with a similar wheel setup to what we've got throughout the rest of this thing, which is 5x5, right? Is that going to be high enough? No. That's... yeah, that should be fine. It's like so. Yeah, that should work nicely. I don't think that suspension is going to be... in fact, it's definitely not within range of the welders, which is unfortunate. But really, if I lose this suspension, it is not the end of the world. And I wanted to make sure that we've, again, got armor all the way around the welders so they don't get shot at directly either. So for these turrets, I'm just going to place down our connections with small conveyor cubes for the moment, so that we've got a setup for where they're going to be connected. And this will mean that I can then grind these down and set up all of our armor blocks, knowing exactly where the turrets are going to be. It is always a problem with not piping these from directly underneath, is that you've then got exposed areas that can be shot out that will make your turrets, well, render your turrets quite a lot less effective because you won't be able to rearm them. For these ones on top, they should be fairly simple. Alright, and then we go with our front mounted turrets. So probably from, let's just check this out. If I go with a turret there, yeah, so from the center of each of these, then have a turret forward, set one up as a central one back here. Alright, that should be all the little conveyor ports for all of the turrets, so we can weld that up, and then I can start placing down our armor and start building up the armor around these decoys at the front. Oh, this thing is coming into shape. Taking shape? That's what I was trying to say. It's taking shape. Yeah. So I think if I shape the armor like that, it should all be within welder range. Even these bits up the top. At the front here, we're not going to, but that's to be expected. We're never going to get it all within the welder range, but I might make the front heavy armor anyway, even if it's not going to be repaired, as I would like to think that it's going to provide some tiny little bit of protection more than what light armor is going to. And I might fiddle with that shape a bit later. What I want to do at the moment is just set up this bit around the decoy and get rid of that because it keeps getting in my way. So that should provide a pretty solid little box around the decoy. As long as the decoy attracts enough attention to itself, that should provide us a much greater degree of survivability, since we won't be getting all of that fire coming in straight on the rest of the vehicle. I reckon we can work with that shape later and come up with something decent. I think next episode we'll do all of the armor cladding, and I reckon I've got comfortably enough room in the center here for a rotor-based cannon. And I know I said I was thinking of doing that as a later on addition, but with the size of this thing, I figure why the heck not? We'll do it next time. So next time we'll replace our rotor-based cannon in the center here, and we'll do as much of the armor cladding as I possibly can. I might even just try and do that all as a time lapse, since a lot of the design stuff we've been through before. If there are any areas where you'd be interested in knowing how I'm going to approach the design to try and make it look interesting, let me know, and I'll try and remember to focus on those rather than just skipping them in a time lapse. But before we end today, there is something we need to do. I was given a suggestion that I very much like for the catapult, and that is at the rear here. I have only got a single welder on these blocks, and I was kind of thinking, I don't want to put a second one out the back because then this whole thing is going to extend out way, way, way too far. However, only one of the welders affecting this area actually needs to be piped, and it's the piping that would make this come out so much too far. If I pop a welder in here so that it can reach the area that needs to be welded, I would then have to put a conveyor system all the way out here, then put the connector even further out, and this whole thing becomes quite a long... well, it extends out a bit further than I would like past these rear wheels. So, instead of having the conveyors, we can just have these welders not piped. Since the welders are actually just providing a welding function and the other welders that are attached here would be the ones providing the goodies, I can, or I should be able to, increase the welding speed of each of these decoys by having these welders even if they're not piped. I'll need to put conveyors going over the top here so that I've got this rear conveyor piped, but that should be fine because that's high rather than backwards. And it'll almost end up looking like a bit of a spoiler for this thing because it's so sporty. But with those welders back there, I should still be able to launch just fine. And that will make it so... I think it makes it quicker. I haven't tested. I do believe though that even if a welder isn't piped, it is going to combine its effects. So we should be able to shorten that reload time significantly. Hopefully enough that we can have 8 decoys in the air at once. So I'm going to get on to welding this up, and then next time we are going to finish off the tank with its armor design and build the rotor turret. Now that rotor turret I'm going to be using Whip's turret slaving script on because I want it to fire without me having to do anything so that I can still drive around. Because having piston fired catapults and a rotor based turret on the one grid couldn't be any more me. So there's all that and plenty more to come, and I will see you then.